let's not waste time. Asda is in freefall, 22 consecutive months of declining sales, an approximate 4.2% drop at Christmas 2025, while every single rival was going up. And behind all of it, a story about what happens when a brand gets sold to the highest bidder, loaded with debt, and stripped of everything that made it worth buying in the first place. For a certain generation of British shoppers, Asda wasn't just a supermarket. It was a promise, an attitude, the scrappy northern chain that took on the big boys and won by being simpler, cheaper, and prouder of it. That's Asda Price first appeared in 1977. Shoppers tapping their back pockets, money saved, simple as that. For decades, Asda was widely perceived as Britain's cheapest grocer, a slightly cheeky, no-nonsense business that families trusted because it never pretended to be something it wasn't. You went to Asda, you filled your trolley, you left with change. That was the deal. By the late 1990s, Asda was the third biggest supermarket in the UK and growing. Then in 1999, the Americans came calling. Walmart paid over £6 billion for Asda in 1999. At the time, it was the largest foreign takeover in UK retail history. And for a while, it seemed to work. Walmart brought scale, global buying power, and an everyday low prices philosophy that matched Asda's DNA. But from around 2010, cracks started appearing. Aldi and Lidl were growing fast. The German discounters had figured out something important. British shoppers would trade the full supermarket experience for genuinely lower prices. And Walmart, with its eyes fixed on the US and its other global markets, wasn't giving Asda the investment it needed to fight back. Store standards began to slip, investment slowed. While Tesco and Sainsbury's were building loyalty schemes and investing in own brand ranges, Asda was treading water. Then, in the 4 years before the sale, Walmart received several £1 billion in dividends. Think about that, £4 billion taken out of a supermarket that was already struggling to compete. When the new owners arrived, they weren't inheriting a well-maintained machine. They were inheriting something that had been quietly hollowed out. In 2021, Walmart sold Asda. The buyers were two billionaire brothers from Blackburn, Mohsin and Zuba Issa, and a private equity firm called TDR Capital. The price was £6.8 billion. The Issa brothers were celebrated, self-made entrepreneurs who'd built a petrol forecourt empire from nothing. The narrative was compelling, fresh thinking, northern roots, a genuine connection to the kind of customers Asda served. But here's the thing nobody was talking enough about at the time, and it matters more than anything else in this story. The deal was funded by loading billions of pounds of debt directly onto Asda's own balance sheet. This wasn't the Issa brothers investing their personal fortune into Asda. The debt used to fund the acquisition sat largely on Asda's balance sheet, meaning the business itself carried the repayment burden. It's as if Asda was being made to pay for its own takeover. It's a model private equity has used for decades. You borrow the money, you put the debt into the company you've just bought, and then the company has to generate enough cash to service that debt on top of running itself. It's called a leveraged buyout, and it works brilliantly when the market is stable and growth is guaranteed. The problem was the deal was done at the end of a COVID grocery boom. People had been stuck at home, spending more on food than ever before. The numbers looked great, but the moment that boom ended, the market changed. Inflation surged, the war in Ukraine sent food prices through the roof, and interest rates, which had been near zero for over a decade, started rising fast. Asda now had to service billions in debt at a time when borrowing had never been more expensive. Finance costs have run into the hundreds of millions per year. It's said to be around a potential figure of £611 million. Just in financing costs for a year, before they've paid a single member of staff, before they've restocked a single shelf, before they've done a single thing to actually improve the business. That number is the anchor around Asda's neck. And it's the thing that makes everything else in this story make a horrible kind of sense. With that kind of debt pressure, the cuts came fast. Staff hours were reduced, shelves stopped being filled as quickly. The experience that shoppers had relied on for decades began to quietly fall apart. Lynette from Swindon had been shopping at Asda for over 20 years. She watched it change. You could see it in the supermarket. Half the tills were closed, shelves were empty. She's now doing her main shop at Aldi and Lidl, and she's not coming back. Madeline in Crawley tells a similar story. A lot of the shelves are quite empty, and there are always trolleys in the aisles when they're filling up shelves. Sometimes you can't get to where you want to be, it puts you off. Similar complaints have appeared in many customer surveys and online reviews. These aren't people who went looking for reasons to leave. These are loyal customers who kept showing up until the experience became impossible to ignore. And for every Lynette and Madeline willing to say it out loud, there are thousands more who just quietly changed where they shop. Behind the scenes, management was also in chaos. Following the takeover, the CEO left. Mohsin Issa took the reins himself. Former executives say his instincts were good, but that he needed an experienced retailer beside him to navigate what was an incredibly difficult period. That support never really materialized. Then came the technology overhaul. Asda had to migrate away from all of Walmart's systems. Everything from checkouts to the website to the groceries app. They installed close to 16,500 point-of-sale systems. They built an entirely new online platform. This wasn't optional, but the timing was catastrophic. The final stage of the migration coincided with the run-up to Christmas 2025, their most important trading period of the year. Empty shelves, disrupted deliveries, customers who'd already been stretched thin, finally snapping. One person familiar with the situation described it as a nightmare that put the entire turnaround 6 months behind schedule. It's annoying, disappointing, they said. But we had to get out of the Walmart system. That's true. But it tells you something about the state of Asda's planning that nobody found a way to do it without torching Christmas. By autumn 2024, Mohsin Issa had stepped back from his executive role. TDR Capital took full control. In December 2024, Asda registered its 22nd consecutive month of declining sales. So who do you call when a supermarket is in freefall? Apparently, you call the man who fixed it 30 years ago. Alan Layton was appointed executive chair in November 2024. He'd been at Asda in the 1990s and was credited with the turnaround that made the business what it became. His big idea this time round: rollback. The same price-cutting campaign he'd used successfully back then. Here's how it works. You temporarily cut prices on a range of products. When the promotional period ends, instead of reverting to the old price, the new lower price is locked in permanently as the Asda price. Layton's stated goal is to make Asda a potential 5 to 10% cheaper than Tesco, Sainsbury's and Morrison's by the end of 2026. He said he was prepared to take a significant hit on profits in the short term to get there. And the pricing data is actually encouraging. Research firm Associa found that across more than 30 branded items during the Christmas quarter of 2025, Asda was regularly cheaper than its main rivals. The Grocer magazine, which runs a closely watched weekly price survey, has had Asda topping the table multiple times this past year. The trouble is, none of it seemed to be working. Early signs suggested the turnaround hasn't reversed the decline. Sales continued to fall. The gap kept widening. Customers who left for Aldi and Lidl aren't coming back for a price cut on branded baked beans when Aldi's own version costs half as much anyway. Adam Leyland, editor-in-chief of The Grocer, put it plainly: for shoppers, it's not just about price. Customer service matters. In-store experience matters. Availability matters. Perception matters. And right now, Asda is losing on several of those fronts simultaneously. William Woods, a food retail analyst at Bernstein Research, believes Asda should have held on to its Aldi and Lidl price match campaign instead of ending it in January 2025. The Club card at Tesco and the Nectar card at Sainsbury's work because they give customers a wow moment at the till, a visible, instant reward that feels personal. Rollback is a price on a shelf. It doesn't make you feel like you're in on something. Then there's the supplier problem. In a report by the BBC, one major supplier said they'd started pulling back from Asda entirely. Asda was asking for too much promotional investment for too little return. When suppliers start hedging their bets, it compounds the problem. Fewer deals means fewer reasons for shoppers to choose Asda over anyone else. Here's where this story stops being about retail and starts being about something more fundamental. Asda needs to invest heavily to win back customers. Better stores, more staff, better technology, a better product range. That investment costs money, but every pound Asda generates has to run past the approximate £611 million worth of annual debt financing before it can be used for anything else. To reduce that debt, Asda has already sold off stores and a distribution centre, then rented them back, a move called sale and leaseback. It raises cash in the short term, but it means you're now paying rent on buildings you used to own. You've traded a capital asset for a recurring cost. It's the financial equivalent of selling your house to make the mortgage payment, then renting it back from the bank. One former Asda executive didn't mince words. It's an amazing brand. But sadly, I believe the business is totally broken. Whoever the owner is, I just don't think the balance sheet can stomach the level of investment required. The lack of investment goes back 10 to 15 years. That view is echoed by a major supplier who said Asda and Morrison's, another supermarket struggling under private equity ownership, are both in a race to escape their debt burdens before the business permanently shrinks around them. They said, "I would love for them to get back to where they were. Whether it's feasible is another question." Asda's own spokesperson says the business has strong underlying cash flow and can comfortably cover its obligations. And to be fair, there are genuine assets here: a popular George clothing range, in-store pharmacies and opticians, and a convenience network of around 500 stores. These aren't nothing. But in the traded debt markets, where investors buy and sell the right to be repaid Asda's borrowings, prices fell further in early 2026. When debt traders get nervous, that's a signal worth taking seriously. Jed Futter spent 15 years as a buyer at Asda. He now helps suppliers negotiate with supermarkets, and he fears his former employer is in real trouble. Not the kind of trouble you fix with a clever marketing campaign, the structural kind. Let's be clear about what happened here. A beloved British brand, trusted by millions for decades, was sold to an American corporation that underinvested in it for 10 years while extracting billions in dividends. It was then sold again to new owners who loaded it with debt at exactly the wrong moment, using a financial model that works fine in boom times and becomes a stranglehold when the market turns. Management came and went. The basics fell apart. And by the time the alarm bells were too loud to ignore, Asda had lost nearly 3 full percentage points of market share, worth by one estimate £4.5 billion in annual revenue at today's prices. That's not a bad quarter. That's not a marketing misstep. That's a prolonged structural decline that can be measured in years. Alan Layton himself has compared the turnaround to climbing Everest. That's not the language of a man who thinks he's got a straightforward problem to solve. And the customers who left? Many of them are gone for good. Lynette from Swindon is clear about it. "I don't think I will ever go back to shopping at Asda again. I might pick up the odd thing there, but they've lost me as a loyal customer." She speaks for something that price cuts alone cannot fix. Once a supermarket loses the habit, once it's no longer the place people automatically go on a Tuesday evening or a Saturday morning, winning those visits back is one of the hardest things in retail. You don't just need to be cheaper, you need to be better. And better costs money Asda may not have. Some in the industry believe some form of consolidation is coming, whether that means parts of the business being sold, a merger, or something more radical. The shape of that outcome depends almost entirely on whether 2026 shows any real signs of life in the data. What's certain is this: the "that's Asda price" era, the back-pocket tapping, no-nonsense British institution that millions of families built their weekly shop around. That Asda exists now as a memory. What's left is a business fighting for its life under a potential £3.8 billion in debt, trying to convince shoppers who've already voted with their feet to give it one more chance. They need to turn this around, maybe even within a year, to help make customers believe it's worth it. That's the Asda story. Do you still shop there? Has your local store gone downhill? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into the British brands that shaped our lives and what's really happened to them, subscribe and hit the bell. This channel is just getting started.